Hola chicos! Today we're going to talk about los mandatos informales, so informal commands. This means that if you're talking to your buddy, the to command is what we're learning today. Bésame guapa. Okay, how do we form these? For affirmatives, you want to just use the L form of the verb. Now that might be a little bit confusing because if you're talking directly to somebody, you're used to using the to form. But when you're giving a command, this is a different mood. It's also called the imperative mood or el imperativo. So when you're giving a direct order to somebody, you're actually going to use a different form. It's easy to remember because it's the L form of the verb, but you have to remember that you use that when you're speaking, you're using to commands, so it can be a little bit confusing. So you have habla, speak, come, eat, and escribe, write. For irregulars, los irregulares, you're going to have to memorize them because they don't follow any specific pattern. So di is from decir, haz is from hacer, ve is from ver, ve is from ir, excuse me. Se is from ser, ten is from tener, ven is from venir, sal from salir, and pon from poner, and mantén comes from mantener. It follows a similar pattern as tener. In the negative as well, which we'll see in a few minutes. Now, when you form negatives, if you've already learned the subjunctive, you just need to remember that it's the corresponding subjunctive form. But for those of you who have not learned the subjunctive, the process is the following. You want to take the yo form of the verb in the present tense, cut off the O, and add the opposite vowel. So what's an opposite vowel? AR verbs will use an E, and ER and IR verbs will use an A as opposite vowels. You want to finish with an S on the end of the verb and a no in front. The verb form is the same as the corresponding subjunctive to form of the verb, which if you've learned the subjunctive, that will be easy for you to remember. If not, you have to kind of be methodical about this and follow the process. So we have some ejemplos de mandatos negativos, informales. Por ejemplo, no salgas de la casa, don't leave the house. So you look here and you see salgas, okay, that came from salgo, which is the yo form of salir. We cut off the O of salgo, we add the opposite vowel of an IR verb like salir, it's going to be A. You add the S to the end and you put the no in front, so no salgas de la casa. Same with no comas las galletas. Como is the yo form in the present tense, you cut off the O, the opposite vowel of an ER verb is A. You add an S to the end and you put a no in front. Don't eat the cookies. No evites las verduras. It comes from evitar. Evito is the yo form, cut off the O, add the opposite vowel. For an AR verb is E. S to the end and no in front. Don't avoid vegetables. And there are a few irregular negatives, and they correspond with their forms in the subjunctive if you learn them. Otherwise, you are going to have to memorize them because, again, they don't follow a specific pattern. So ir, it's no vayas. Ser, no seas, dar, no des, and estar, no estés. Those are the primary ones. There are a few other irregulars, but those are the most important ones. Some spelling changes with mandatos negativos. Let's remind us of our cargar-zar verbs, which like to give us problems sometimes. Use the same spelling changes as you do in the first-person preterite. So you remember that you learned car was Q-U-E in the first-person preterite, gar was G-U-E, and zar was CE. It's the same thing with mandatos negativos, informales. So, por ejemplo, you have buscar, no busques, llegar, no llegues, empezar, no empieces. The good thing is you don't have to worry about accents like you do in the first-person preterite. Now, using object pronouns with commands. Sometimes I call these RIDs because it stands for reflexive, indirect, direct pronoun. And it's easier to say RIDs than object pronouns. And also, RID is the order that it goes in. You have reflexive before an indirect, indirect before a direct, whenever you have to place them together. You want to attach the pronouns to the end of an affirmative command, and you want to put the pronouns in front of a negative command. If you put pronouns at the end of an affirmative command, oftentimes the stress in the word is affected and you need to add an accent. So, unos ejemplos, we have comelo. You've added lo to the end. You need to count back 3 vowels if you add 1 rid to the end of an affirmative command. So we go back to the first O. Dímelo. D normally doesn't need an accent if you add one rid, but if you add two, it does change the stress, and again, you need to count back three vowels. O, E, I, so we go back to the I, dímelo. Be careful if you're going to count back vowels, you need to be careful when you have a QU or a CU. Sometimes that can throw off the vowel count. So that's why pronunciation is really important. Sometimes you can hear it when you pronounce it. Then with negatives, you have no te pongas la chaqueta and no se lo mandes. So you see that when you have no se lo mandes, the indirect comes before the direct. And that's, again, ID is how you can remember it, ID. Also, remember too, formal commands are formed exactly the same way as two negative commands, except they don't have the S at the end. So when I do a lesson on formal commands, I think it will be much simpler because you'll already know how to form them by having learned how to do the two commands. And that is how you do informal commands.